My wife and our neighbor, a very attractive woman who had never married, were sitting on the raised second-level deck on a warm Sunday afternoon in early March, chatting and taking in the warmth of the day. To be honest, I've had to cover my eyes several times when I caught myself staring at our neighbor inappropriately. Saluting Johnny, she was so attractive to me. I never would have married my wife if I had never met her first. But I'd made my bed and I would lie in it, like all good doofuses. I was right under them, working quietly on something that doesn't seem important right now. I needed to get a few things done, so neither of the ladies knew that I was there. My entire attention was drawn to the serious conversation they were having above me. After celebrating their 28th birthdays in the past few months, Dina and Bridget got into a heated debate about their life goals. Bridget was annoyed because, in her opinion, none of the men she had dated were suitable for marriage. It didn't help that her mother felt she should have been married to a good man years ago and was starting to think that she was too picky, as her mother said she should just find a man, train him, and get married. Her biological clock, in her mind, was ticking down, and she wanted a couple of children towing behind her as soon as possible. On the other hand, my wife Dina had never listened to anyone and had always been a strong, independent woman. According to her, after we got married, I told my husband Trey that the doctors said I couldn't conceive. So when I was in the hospital a few years back getting my appendix removed, I had the doctors tie my tubes at the same time. Trey still does not know that I had that done. I wanted to make sure that I would never have kids because I was afraid it would alter my looks. My image is very important for my fans on social media. I cannot be seen with hanging tits and stretch marks. It took a while, but Trey is finally beginning to accept it. Bridget, replied Dina, that's the dirtiest thing I have ever heard of. Trey would make a great dad, he loves kids. You both talked about having kids, what gives you the right to deny him in that way? Why would you do that? I did it because I needed to change the perception of his reality, said Dina, by making him believe that it was an act of God that brought my medical problem upon me. So, you used his belief in your honesty to deliberately deceive him, Bridget responded, just to take away for good what he hoped and planned for. If we had children, it would take away from me what belongs to me, his undivided attention, said Dina. In the trips we take twice a year to award ourselves, children would have robbed me of the lifestyle we had created for ourselves. So, I wasn't going to allow that to ever happen. I'll be right back, I'm going to refill our glasses. I moved from under the deck and toward my car as my wife entered the house again. I stood there in silence, as though I was asking myself, did I just hear that? It was time for me to leave. I wanted to get as far away as I could from my spouse. I was afraid that if I didn't, my anger would spiral out of control and become a rage. Not just because of what she said, but also because of what it implied. What I had just heard had made me sick to my stomach. I was so shocked that I didn't notice anything around me. When Bridget noticed me, she realized I had just listened in on their conversation. Much later, I would find out that Bridget felt the same way about me that I did about her. Neither of us had done anything about it because we both respected Dina so much. She saw me as great father material and decided then and there that I was the man she should have children with. She made the decision that she would find a way to move in and become my partner in the walk of life if I began to consider divorcing my wife Dina due to her lies. Bridget and Dina grew up in dissimilar circumstances. Dina's father lavished his daughter with everything since he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. She demanded and expected the best. Money was just a convenience to make things easier for her because her first full-time job was in upper management in one of his businesses. Regardless of the cost, she demanded and would not accept anything less than the finest that money could purchase. Dina was a beautiful woman, 5 feet 6 inches tall, with curly black hair, a 34-26-34 body type, and an extreme dislike of anything that wasn't always extravagant. She considered our vacations to be extravagant if they weren't 2 weeks of lavish treatment, as if she were the Queen of England. For me, however, they were an unnecessary expense and boredom, something I didn't want or enjoy. Dina chose every item of clothing and jewelry to accentuate her image as a trendsetter and a prominent figure in the social media community. She had successfully turned her Instagram and Twitter accounts into a lucrative venture, and ever since she had taken that route, she had done so with great tenacity. Everything was designed to draw attention to Dina via social media and mass media. Every month, she changed her appearance and image in the fashion world. She was more well-liked in her community than the wife of the president. She was so popular that if she bought something she liked, many people would consider it a must-have item. Her fan base had grown to just over 1 million in just 3 years. She worked with 2 or 3 sponsors, earning good money by being nothing more than a social butterfly. Her ultimate goal was to land a big sponsor where she could potentially make millions. Sometimes she would type something on Twitter just to be able to create a situation or an idea that would give her additional wanted attention. She loved being the center of attention and milked it to her advantage. Every image of her was intended to influence her marketability and to draw more followers into the illusion she was creating about herself, thus adding to its revenue-generating stream. She liked to be out and about in the city during social events. The larger her entourage, the more visibility in the gossip pages, which in turn was tweeted about and posted on Instagram. If it was happening in the city of New York, she had to be part of it. Therefore, I was usually left behind, which suited me just fine. I didn't need the limelight or stupid people following me to define who and what I am. In addition, my day job required me to be sharp and competitive. If I wasn't, I wouldn't last long in the cutthroat industry I was in. Bridget's father was a hard-working man who had to work hard and long for everything he had. He had instilled in all of his children a sense of value and never took anything for granted. Starting from nothing, he designed a product, developed it into a marketing line, and over the years had grown his company into a worldwide organization by buying out businesses that would fit into what he was building. He ran a tight ship, kept his costs under control, and his organization was one of the blue-chip stocks that paid increasing dividends each year. His team had a slow and steady approach that worked very well for him. In his personal life, his wife and children came first. He raised his daughter to be grateful for what she had. Though both were quite secure in their positions in life, Bridget was more selective and reserved than my wife ever was when it came to things like getting more value for half the price out of things. Those values had brought her a long way since she had graduated from university. The two were the complete opposites in every way, and I was still baffled as to how they could become friends. Bridget exuded a wholesomeness that blossomed fully. She would be just as happy holding a fishing pole in a river, dressed in blue jeans, having a great time with friends and family, as she would be the life of the party at a high society dance. Any man who took the time to get to know Bridget would be happy to live a lifetime of contentment simply by being with her. An added bonus would be the advantages of getting lost in those sensual curves. Even at her age, she was a natural beauty whose loving nature would be a great asset when she became a mother. Anyone who encountered her knew she was the real deal, not someone who made herself into the person everyone wanted to be. In my eyes, both of the ladies were polar opposites. I was digesting the words I had heard out of my wife of 6 years' mouth over a cold beer at a strange watering hole. The way I saw it, the more I felt like I was nothing but a glorified servant. I was expected to perform a role Dina had designed for me, and as long as I did, she would be happy. Everything she did for me was to benefit what she was trying to do with her social media presence. Seeing what our relationship had evolved into forced me to ask myself what she had seen in me in the first place. The longer I thought about it, the more I understood how little love there was left in our marriage. I was now just one of the many toys she had to make her online image and lifestyle better. She had been the judge, juror, and executor in how our marriage would work. My thoughts about us and our relationship no longer mattered. To protect a lie, she had made sure that her body would not reproduce in this reality. I was seeing that she really had an inability to appreciate anything. She used all to further her goals. I was just another tool she had to manipulate and turn into an advantage. My wishes and wants had been totally marginalized in our marriage. Now that I had learned her real truths and the lies she used to promote them, I had to decide if I could continue to live with them. My cell phone rang. I looked at it and killed the call. I wasn't really ready to talk to the queen bee I had married. I was too busy trying to figure out if I should stay or run. By the time I left the bar, I pretty much had decided what had to be done. I would no longer be at her beck and call. She would have to start doing a lot of things for herself. No longer would she have my full support. Our lives were about to change in a drastic manner. I knew that in her self-centeredness, she would never comprehend the reality of what was going to happen. I could now see clearly that Dina, for the last 3 years, had been slowly separating herself from building a future with me. I wasn't sure if she realized it, neither had I, but I did now. I prepared to go home, knowing full well she would be gone to be seen at another social event with her entourage. I had taken stock of our life together and knew where it was now headed. I knew for sure, with the direction she was going, there was no way for her to come back to some point of normalcy. Bright and early the following day, I arrived at my office before anyone else, pretty much concluding that my marriage to Dina was over. I was looking at end-of-day stock values in the futures market for our clients. If our clients were tricked, algorithms would click in automatically, but I was looking for stocks that I could buy short and buy back later for less, both for myself and my clients, 5 or 6 times a year. I would play the day trader game to make some extra revenue for my clients who permitted it. I knew that when I walked out on my marriage, this job would probably be over, and my wife's father was one of the firm's biggest clients, so he would probably demand it, knowing that I was really motivated a lot. I found 2 stocks that looked promising and tagged them to pop up on the screen when the markets opened. It paid off. I sold them short in the morning 3 times before the first hour of trading was done with large volumes, which got people believing it was time to sell. The latest rumors about those trade deals added to the turmoil in the market that day. After the comment from the officials in China was heard by the market, it plunged downward. I was thankful that the smallness of political leaders allowed their childish behavior to come out publicly. One said something stupid, so the other had to respond in kind. The stock market dropped 500 points by noon. By the end of the day, it was down 900 points. The 2 stocks I had picked were 2 of the day's biggest losers. I put in buying at 2 p.m. for $2 a share less than the current value, and by closing, I had bought all I had sold earlier back for my clients. I had made $1.7 million net for myself. I cashed out at $250,000. I was very proud of the day's accomplishments, but I had no one to tell. After the stock market closed, I started to draft the emails I would send out in the morning to inform the clients what I had done and how much they had made. The second paragraph would contain my suggestions on what to do with it to avoid a huge tax bill at year-end. It was almost 5 when I got done. I called Bridget at her father's office and asked her to join me for supper if she was still going to be in the downtown part of the city at the end of the workday. She was, and we arranged a time and a place. Then I texted my wife, Dina, to inform her I was having dinner with a new client. Knowing damn well that she wouldn't care because she was out and about either creating or getting more social media attention. Dina responded in kind, letting me know what she was doing and that she wouldn't be home until the wee hours of the morning at the earliest. She and her entourage were hitting one of the popular nightclubs to create some Instagram moments to promote her social presence. The key to her success was keeping her physical presence out there. I was realizing that in her reality, Dina had to be the center of attention because everything was about her and her wants. When I got to the restaurant, Bridget was waiting for me in the lobby. Even though she was dressed for work, she still looked amazing to me. I guess she noticed that I was staring at her too much because a big, friendly smile appeared on her face. I walked up to her and told her that I had made our reservation, so she got up and put her arm around mine as we walked to the hostess. After I gave her my name, she was shown to our table, where I pulled out her chair before I went to sit in mine. After we were seated across from each other, we began to unwind. I thought Bridget had the most beautiful emerald eyes. "I'm not surprised you called me, Trey," Bridget replied. "I assume you heard your wife and I talking today, because when you walked to your car, I could see the look of shock on your face." "Regretfully, I did." I said, "It was an eye-opening experience that has forever changed everything. Genie cannot be put back in the bottle because we would not have been married if I had known the truth at the outset." "That's not really what you mean, do you?" did Bridget ask. "Yes, I do," I said with earnestness. "Are you certain about your plans yet?" As we took our seats across from one another, Bridget questioned. I said, "Given what I've learned, Dina has really left me with no choice. I'm not a man who can accept or live with someone else's lies. Others might, but not me. Her actions have demonstrated that I was never deserving of the truth. Bridget noted, "It sounds like you're going to want me to confirm what she said." "How do you want me to do that?" "It should be as simple as a notarized statement," I replied. "With that, I can go to court and ask the judge to order the hospital to show why the medical procedure wasn't performed, since Dina has already said it was. Legally speaking, it is now regarded as public knowledge and is subject to court orders for research. It is now regarded as public knowledge by the court. However, how will that assist you with your divorce?" "I don't see it giving you an advantage," Bridget inquired. "You're accurate. It wouldn't in a divorce. But it's a goldmine in an annulment," I said. "It establishes the basis of evidence that she used deception to force me into marriage. She would only be able to take what she brought into the marriage, the court would be compelled to rule." "What you don't know, Bridget, is that I was with Dina when she broke the news that she couldn't have children to her parents," I said. "That was before she had her tubes tied." Bridget's face turned white as she realized how smart Trey's reasoning was. She thought that Dina would be more upset about being financially penalized than about having her marriage ended. Based on what she had been seeing, she thought that Trey was starting to see it that way as well. An annulment would make it, in the eyes of the court, as if the marriage had never existed. They were excited to become grandparents, so they were devastated. Her actions are what are causing the issue. They will perish trying to uncover the truth. I've known them for a long time. I'll have the necessary statement scheduled for courier delivery to you tomorrow. They're good people and they don't deserve this, but neither do you," Bridget remarked. "I'll have a member of my staff act as a notary." "Thank you," I replied. "Now let us sit back, enjoy our wine, and each other's company while we eat." That night, we began to become friends. It had led to a pleasant discovery of how much we had in common. Bridget and I went home together because she lived next door. It was a pleasant meal. We talked about our likes and dislikes in general and were surprised by how much we had in common. Until now, we had only been acquaintances. However, circumstances were forcing us to open up to each other. "Trey, I'm going to be trying to get my father to turn over the management of his personal investments and mine over to you," Bridget said, adding one more suggestion before we said goodnight. "I'll tell Dina that it was my father's idea. In this manner, I'll be able to update you on her thoughts without having to ask her outright about our growing friendship." "That sounds good. That way, you'll have some good justifications for your suggestion to your father when you text me your email address and I forward some information to you," I said. "I am aware that our fee schedule is lower than that of most of our rivals." Giving Bridget the tools she needed to avoid being accused of doing something unethical for our own benefit, I sent her the confidential information on what we charged regular clients and what our spread was for corporate accounts when negotiating for their employees for 401k accounts first thing the following morning. As promised, Bridget delivered the letter to me the following day, which I forwarded to my lawyer, who promptly arranged for one of the top divorce attorneys in his firm to take on the case. Over the course of the following week, we had brief phone conversations, which I began to look forward to every day. My clients were extremely pleased with the outcome, and on Friday I sold some of the shares I had purchased from Monday's profit for myself and my clients for a nice profit while keeping the original dollar value of investments intact. The stock market had gone up dramatically all week and had recovered what it had lost on Monday. I was called to the president's office at 11 a.m. on a Friday. He was a busy man, so being called to his office without warning usually meant that you were being promoted or being escorted out the door. His executive assistant gave me a look and said, "Don't worry, go right in. Mr. Richards, he's expecting you." This worried me even more because his receptionist had never addressed me as Mr. since the day I started. As soon as I walked in, the president got to his feet, extended his hand, and said, "Well done, Trey Richards. It is a great accomplishment that we were able to persuade the president of Data Store Control Corporation to consider coming to our firm to manage his employee retirement funds. Just that account size nearly doubled the total volume of what we oversee. The vice president overseeing that division is currently finalizing the details. David says he's fair but a tough negotiator. You tactfully showed him how we could save the employees thousands of dollars in service fees. Excellent work, young man. We need more people just like you. When will they be visiting? I inquired. I understand you will be handling Clarence Smith's personal account as well as his daughter Bridget, he said. We take over the management the 1st of April. Well, I can't take all the credit, sir, I replied. If it wasn't for the team, I would not have been able to swing it. I believe there is more to this story than you're going to tell me, he said with a smile. Get into Clarence Smith's circle is extremely rare. He is regarded as being extremely private. Regarding this, I will respect your right to privacy and stop there. You have captured the interest of the entire board, including myself, with what you have accomplished. I grinned and giggled, not sure quite what to say, but then a text from Bridget said, lunch had won on me, and that was the message that saved the day. I suppose she wants to clarify the situation and discuss our future course of action. You've more than earned it. Take as long as you want if you got nothing pending, the president declared. It's evident how much of an importance you now hold for me, he said. You're the man I expect to keep me directly informed if there are any problems with them going forward. Out of habit, I went back to my office and turned off my computer, hoping to keep my client list as safe as possible from potential thieves in the pool. I was eager to hear Bridget's explanation for not telling me. Bridget was waiting for me when I arrived. She had let her red hair down instead of having it done up in a bun. She had used a curling iron on it, and it made her look years younger, bringing her natural beauty to the front. She was wearing a white dress that was definitely not office wear. It hugged her frame tightly, which only served to heighten the natural curves of her body. Like every other fool, I could not stop looking. Today, she had deliberately dressed to get someone's attention, and she had definitely got mine. Looking at her had the fluids in my mouth running. It was working, for I could see that she was getting a lot of eye attention from the men waiting to be seated for lunch. I was happy for Bridget, she deserved it. At 5 feet 8 inches, she was a stunning beauty. Her body features would draw most men in. The problem was that in this area of the city, too many were looking for an advantage and would be presenting themselves as something they weren't. That was partly why she stood out to me. By looking at her on a daily basis, you just knew she wasn't trying to impress someone, she was content in being just herself. With the people in this part of the city, she was rare. The street name for this area was the Hustle City because most of it was playing an angle, developing an edge, or looking for an advantage. She got up and walked toward me as soon as I walked in, and everyone could see that the excitement in her eyes was reserved for one man. When we finally met, she gave me a gentle kiss on the cheek and put her arm around my waist to let all the men know that she wasn't available for marriage. I didn't know why at the time, because she had always been Dina's friend, and I didn't think that would be appropriate. Thank you for what you did, Trey, Bridget uttered. After reviewing the numbers you sent me, my dad's vice president for finance told me we would be foolish to choose not to work with the company you represent. The vice president repeatedly complimented me for approaching him with the idea before going straight to my father. You are very welcome. I was happy to do it, but I wasn't prepared for this to happen so quickly, I said. Because the management fees are more than a percentage point or two less than they were previously, each employee will have a little increase in their retirement account balance. The vice president now views me as a valuable asset to the company, not just a daddy's girl, according to Bridget. For that, I would like to thank you. That's a bonus, too, I replied, but you could have told me. This morning, I had to fake my way through an unexpected meeting with the president. I assumed I might be fired after I was called in without warning. My dad told me that he made sure to give you the credit for getting us interested in coming over, she said, laughing. I did not know my dad called your firm last night and talked to one of the vice presidents to talk price in terms until this morning myself, she added. Walking up to the hostess, Bridget gave her name and slid her hand into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. They led us back to our table. I want to go to the other side of the table, Trey. Come sit beside me. There's plenty of room, Bridget said as she slid into the booth. I promise not to take advantage of you or lie to you ever. As for me trying to seduce you, although it might be an appealing idea to me in this place, it's impossible. I sat down next to her after giving it some thought. It was her comment that made me smile. Bridget had been honest with me thus far in our relationship. That felt like a breath of fresh air to me. I didn't realize she had made sure I was sitting outside until after we had left. Bridget whispered, "My father asked me how I got the inside information. I told him that it was a thank you from you for my help and clarifying a statement that is forcing you to start your divorce. He asked why a simple statement would cause a marriage to collapse. I told him that before I revealed that, I should talk to you to get your approval because what we shared was confidential. That really perked his interest for some reason. It was he who suggested this luncheon, so that is why I got invited to lunch today," I laughed. "If you trust him to keep it to himself, go ahead and explain." "Partly," Bridget replied. "Dina informed me when she called this morning, all excited, that she has to go to Paris, France in a week's time. She has an international luxury company wanting her to become their spokesperson in North America. This is the big sponsor she has been looking for, and they have come to her. She is going to be demanding that you change your schedule and go with her." "Ah, I see," I responded. "It's going to be a shock to her when I say no. Her going may be a blessing because it will give me time to start finding an apartment to rent. My lawyer has already served the hospital, demanding the proof that the operation took place, and is in contact with the health insurance company for their records. The surgeon who did the work is being sued in order to get it confirmed that there was no real medical reason to have it done. I think he will quickly comply because otherwise, it's going to end up costing him a lot of money in court and legal fees." Bridget asked sarcastically, "You're that sure that your marriage is over?" "Bridget, this may sound like I'm preaching, but in today's society, with all the mistruths being spread around, it's become acceptable to lie, not take responsibility, blame someone else, and a whole lot of things that are not moral or right but now are considered socially acceptable," I replied. "You, as an average Joe, can't sue for slander anymore because of the legal costs, which make it easier for these ones to promote their untruths in every way. If you can't be honest about yourself and what you're doing, how can you be honest to anyone else? I won't lie about myself or to anyone else for any reason. It may be outdated and old-fashioned, but it makes me me. Yet, Dina, when confronted, will expect me to accept her lies, live them, pay for them, and just go along with them. She won't admit to doing anything. She would explain that what she said was taken the wrong way or out of context. It's her belief that it's no big deal, as everybody in New York is doing it to some degree. I guess it's my problem because I have to look at myself in the mirror in the morning. As a result, my marriage was dead the moment I found out that our marriage was nothing but a bunch of lies. Any remaining love I had was destroyed when I heard her own words about what she had done to herself. I was perplexed to see that my words had made Bridget grin broadly. "To a lot of people in this room, your words make you a bigot or a hater," said Bridget. "I agree with you fully, but most won't. Should I lower my principles, morals, and standards just to help them justify their hate towards me?" I inquired. "The moment I do, they have won and proved to themselves that everyone who believes differently can be converted to their point of view. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a lot better. You're definitely showing me that you're not what Dina had led me to believe," Bridget whispered as she leaned in closer to me. Our food was brought to us by the waiter. We shared a large T-bone steak, garlic mashed potatoes, and a Greek salad. I made a joke that the lack of tiny lumps in the mashed potatoes meant they weren't pure. "That's exactly what my dad would say, Trey," Bridget grinned. When we were finished, we strolled down the street together because there was no rush to return. He will get a kick out of it when I tell him. While we strolled, Bridget made sure I stayed outside. We made a stop at a street florist, and in celebration of our blossoming friendship, I bought her 6 yellow roses. We finally parted ways to wrap up the workday well after 3. I just could not seem to get back into the swing of things. When I got back to my desk, I was thinking about this redhead who had kind of, set up a future date with me. Whatever our relationship might be, it was beginning to take off. When I got home, I was ready for what I knew was going to happen. My better half was getting dressed as I changed out of my suit because she was scheduled to attend another social function that evening. Shortly after I finished changing, Dina pulled out her request, asking me to start working on it immediately on Monday. Since tax time was quickly approaching and I needed to be available to answer any questions my clients might have, I told her up front that there was no way I could take the time off. Dina was definitely not expecting my refusal and visibly showed her complete dissatisfaction with me. Besides, with the up and down swings in the stock market lately because a lot of idiots with little or no knowledge panic, it's best that I stay near until some sort of stability returns to the market, I said. When you get idiots acting on feelings instead of using accurate knowledge, all sorts of problems can arise.
Who am I going to get to go with me?
Dina asked on this short notice. I'm sure that one of the boy toys in your entourage that follow you around will gladly go with you. After all, according to the New York Times gossip columns, there have been rumors that you have slept with a few of them. Let me tell you that there is no truth to those rumors, Dina said. I have been faithful since the day we got engaged. If that is true, then why haven't these ones denied it? I asked. On second thought, why haven't you? I just did, Dina said, starting to show her anger. I opened the New York Times and went to the Gossip Lady's daily column and started to read out loud. Dina Richards and 6 of her growing entourage were seen leaving the latest showing of Hamilton Wednesday night. It was brought out that they were there to cheer M. Richards up, who is apparently having marital problems with her husband, who has been fashionably missing from M. Richards's arms for quite a few months. Those in the know are beginning to wonder if he still exists. Has M. Richards's open and very public lifestyle begun taking its toll on another one of her personal relationships? It's looking like one of her boy toys, who are always with her, might have stepped up to be more than that. None who are always with her that I have talked to are denying that thought. Inquiring minds wonder if her husband knows what the truth is. I think I have read enough to get the picture, I replied.
Don't you?
But it's not true, Dina remarked, vainly attempting to defend herself. There has to be some truth to it, I replied. After all, it's printed in the New York Times. That's why it's the best-selling paper in the city. Perhaps you planted it yourself, that's why the writer makes it sound so credible. I wonder what your dad thinks. Perhaps I should call and ask him. I started to move away and toward my home office. I got an idea. You can tweet all your followers and ask if the New York Times is telling the truth. After all, over 1 million of your followers can't be wrong, I said. Behind me, I heard Dina slam the bedroom door. I knew she wasn't happy, and tonight she would take out her frustration on someone. I had just given her the very publicity she had been begging for. Dina needed to think deeply. What I knew was that the public perception of her lifestyle implied certain things, so the truth didn't matter. Who was I to argue that the New York Times was lying if they were claiming she was nothing more than a 304? Like most of the newspaper's readers, I was using it to convince Dina that I was falling for the media's hype. Most people would accept anything as the truth if you were the one who created the perception. They would need to have the evidence to support their claims if the nation's most liberal newspaper, the New York Times, was suggesting that she was just a married hooker. I remained in my office until she was picked up by a few members of her entourage. I had no idea at the time that Dina had called Bridget as soon as she left the house to let her know that we had just had a really serious argument that she was unsure how to handle. Dina informed Bridget that I was not viewing our circumstances objectively. Bridget suggested that she might be receiving a taste of her own punishment for not treating her husband with greater respect. How many nights have you left Trey alone? She inquired. While you're off building your dream, what else is Trey supposed to think? Because not once have you publicly denied it when you're out and about in party mode. Has your sexual relationship with Trey cooled off dramatically in the last few months? Is it because your eyes are elsewhere? Dina was afraid to speak because she had been completely absent from me. Before telling Dina about her lovely luncheon with her new love interest, Bridget gave her a hard blow. She mentioned how nice it was to spend a romantic afternoon with a man who wasn't pursuing anything. He was nothing like she had been made to believe, which completely surprised her. We've even decided to attend an out-of-state party together next month. Bridget had never been that aggressive in a relationship with a man before, so Dina realized that somehow she had found someone who really piqued her interest. There was so much Dina wanted to know about him. As Dina realized she was no longer Bridget's focus, she became curious about the juicy details. All Bridget would say to her was that she was carrying 6 beautiful yellow roses around her from room to room. Knowing that her best friend, who had spent years in failed relationships, was now in a relationship that seemed to have potential, must have bothered Dina non-stop throughout the night. I left the thought that Dina would be traveling with a man and that they would be staying in the same suite when she went to Paris, France the following week, and I called the gossip lady's tip line. If she had a contact in Paris who could keep her updated on developments, that might be a good idea. I started transferring all of my personal belongings from our bedroom into the spare bedroom after preparing myself some dinner and loading the dishwasher. While I was waiting for the lawyers, I was beginning to distance myself from her life. I knew that her willful act had permanently damaged her credibility in my eyes. Dina found me out of our bed when she arrived home early the following morning. That Saturday morning, I had changed into my blue jeans and headed to the office before she woke up. It was so busy that I did leave a note on the kitchen counter stating that I needed to work in order to catch up and be prepared for what would happen on Monday. It also assisted in justifying my actions when I refused to comply with her wishes. I was struck by a flash of inspiration at 11 o'clock. After getting cash from an instant teller outside, I headed to the closest florist. I paid with cash for a dozen red roses that I ordered for Bridget Smith and had delivered to our home address. If I knew Dina, by the time they got there, Bridget would be holding her hand. The card read, "From a secret admirer." I had just returned to my office when someone called from the office. It was Dina. I asked in a chilly tone, "What do you want, Dina?" She questioned meekly, "Why did you move out of our bedroom last night?" "Because of the article about us published in the Times," I replied. "It's nothing but rumors. You can't be taking it seriously." "Dina, I think you should be asking yourself how you can prove to your husband that you are not having an affair," I replied with seriousness. "Right now, I can't say, with your current lifestyle, that you're not, because you're always away from home until the wee hours of the morning with some flavor of eye candy on your arm. Doing God knows what, since you don't normally explain things to me about your conduct with these men last few months. What am I to believe? Maybe you have decided that variety is the spice of life. What's written in the New York Times forces me to believe that you are. Besides, why would the New York Times write about it if you weren't?" I hung up the phone without saying another word, knowing that Dina, who had to be in complete control, would be starting to panic. Her own plan to use gossip, publicity, and rumors to advance her social presence and following were blowing up in her face. I had made it clear to her that I had accepted the public's perception and believed something was going on that shouldn't be. I had tactfully said it all without calling her a hooker. Here she was on the verge of landing a huge sponsor and having her marriage starting to blow up in her face. She could not afford it at this time to have the public perception of her affected in any way. It could end up costing her millions if it did. She was now treading in a minefield created by herself, and she knew it. If my gut was telling me right, Dina would be calling Bridget to come over and help her work her situation out. I had never questioned Dina's conduct before, and now I was, and she had no way of disproving what I was implying. Her problem was she had no clue as to why I was really acting like I was. I had gone through the closing figures on the stock market for Friday and had been researching a few stocks that I thought might be having a really good day on Monday. Each person working the stock market floor doing the actual trading would leave behind an unfinished list for the start of the market the next day. Using that knowledge I had gleaned, I found a trader who had what I wanted, so I put a buy offer at the price they were asking. If my thoughts were right, both the stocks I wanted would jump just after opening. If the deal was accepted, it would be entered into the computer and completed at the opening. The amount I had spent was well within the parameters my clients had set. I also bought enough shares to spend what I had made for myself over the last week. Bridget later texted me, "Flowers are beautiful, thank you." At your house, Dina is in a dizzy because she doesn't know how to fix her situation. Can't cancel or postpone the trip. She asked me how she could prove she isn't having an affair when the social media she depends on says that she is. Brilliant move on your part pressuring me for info about my new romantic interest. It's interesting that what I have told her about you, she doesn't recognize at all. She has an event she has to go to, so she will be gone by 5 and won't be home until the wee hours of the morning. I was just about to head out at 4 o'clock when my cell phone went off. It was Emerson Stevens, Dina's father. "Hi, Dad," I said. "What's going on?" "As you know, my wife reads the gossip column regularly," he said. The comment about our daughter's Wednesday night was particularly troubling to her. "Is there any truth to the story?" "Until a couple of weeks ago, I would have automatically said no," I said. "But I learned something that has forced me to hire a team to verify or disprove what was said. Until I get to the truth about that situation, I have to say I honestly don't know." "It's that serious," Dad said. "Dad, it came from Dina's own mouth. I overheard a conversation she was having with our next-door neighbor," I said. "The neighbor gave me a notarized statement verifying what I heard. I promise I will let you know what I find out, as long as you don't shoot the messenger." "Has what she said affected the marriage?" he asked. "To answer your question, it's so serious that I felt that I had no choice but to move into the spare bedroom," I said. "Dina doesn't know that I know what she said, and I am checking things out to verify or disprove what she may have had done." "You can't tell me anymore," my father-in-law asked. "I can email you a copy of the statement, but you can't tell your wife," I said. "When you go through the statement, you will understand why." I quickly emailed him Bridget Smith's statement. It wasn't 5 minutes until he called me back. His anger was easily discerned by the foul language coming out of his mouth. "Dad, you've got to understand, Dina had the operation to tie her tubes after she told us the doctors had informed her she couldn't get pregnant," I said. "It has raised a lot of questions in my mind. My lawyers and I are waiting for a few court orders so that we can find out what the actual truth is. So, if she couldn't get pregnant anyway, why did she get her tubes tied?" "To protect herself and make sure the lie she had told us became true," I said. The line went dead, so I turned the speaker on and waited for a few in case it had not been a dropped call. "Trey, I lost it. If what you believe is proven to be true, divorce her." "I would," he said. "I know you wanted a family with children just as much as her mother and I were looking forward to having grandchildren to spoil." "Well, she's leaving for Paris next week, and I won't be going," I said. "She's found a luxury company that wants to use her as a spokesperson for their products. If she signs, she won't need me for anything anymore. I'm beginning to believe that she is trying to destroy our marriage." Emerson Stevens, the information he had just received, had to be tearing him apart. Dina's words and conduct were forming a path that most would follow because it came across as logical. She was leading them down a path with a pattern of behavior that forced one to draw certain types of conclusions. Once again, I started to pack up and head for home. I was pleased with how the day went. I had just reset the alarm and locked the door when my cell phone went off. It was Bridget. "How long is it going to take you to get home?" she asked. "I'll be there by 7. Why?" I asked. "What's going on?" "I'm at your house ready to put a large roast chicken in the oven, so I need to time it so the meal is ready when you come into the house," Bridget said. "If you have the time, pick up a nice white wine." I think the Uber driver must have broken a few speed laws on the way home because I could not remember the last time I had a home-cooked meal. Home cooking didn't exist in Dina's eyes. There is nothing like the smell of food cooking in the oven to welcome you home. I had picked a nice couple of bottles of white wine to complement the meal. Bridget had gone over top. The roast chicken was cooked to perfection. Its skin was brown and crisp. Yes, the mashed potatoes had lumps. I noticed them and said so, but they were still rich, thick, fluffy, and perfect. The salad was served with its own vinaigrette, so you could pour on enough to satisfy your own tastes. I gladly overate because the food was so good. For some reason, Bridget seemed to enjoy watching me eating everything until there was nothing left on the bone, I commented.
How are you able to pull all of this off?
I asked. I got Dina to convince me that my talking to you in private might help calm the situation down. She offered to order and pay for the food, Bridget explained. I suggested this, and she went for it, saying it was the perfect thing to get Trey to unwind and relax. Perhaps it will allow you to change his thinking so that he will be open to listening to my reasoning. I shook my head, trying to adjust to the fact that Dina didn't even question the idea that Bridget and I would be alone over dinner in a very private setting. I told Dad what was going on with Dina and you, Bridge said. He now understands why the statement I provided you is so important. My dad wants to meet you as soon as possible. I think he wants to see for himself if you're the type of man he thinks you are. We can do that as soon as Dina finds out that your father and you are my clients, I said. Dina's father called me just before you did. His wife had seen the remarks in the gossip article and he needed clarification so he could reassure his wife that they were not true. I ended up sending him a copy of your statement. How did he take it? Bridget asked. About as good as I did, I said. I had to tell him that he would be the first to know what the proof showed when I got it. He now knows I have moved into the second bedroom. His final thought is if what she said can be proved, that I'd better get the divorce as soon as possible. Bridget took my hand, smiled, and whispered, I will be standing right beside you to help you through it. Dina spent more time today trying to find out who my admirer is than dealing with you and her situation. It shows us what is really important to her. That says a lot in itself, I said. I'm just upset with the fact that I didn't see it before, I added.